You are live with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here, broadcasting from the home studio. I've got AJ Vickery and John Biehler with me today as well. We've got a cool program. Later on, we will be chatting with our good friend Eugene Suyu. He is the man behind Tinkerine. We've actually had him on the show in the past. His company out in Delta, they manufacture 3D printers for schools and high schools, universities. Well, they are actually switching over their production lines to help start actually printing out and making medical devices. We'll talk to him and find out what that entails. It's pretty interesting. We'll also be talking about photo stick alternatives. We've had a lot of feedback while people have some downtime. They have been organizing their photos. Well, one of those things to help that is something called a photo stick. We'll talk about that if they're right for you, and maybe some alternatives to that as well. So, guys, lots of news this week. I don't know if you saw this one from Intel. They're pledging another $50 million to help fight the epidemic.
I did see that. Yeah. Again, it's just amazing to see how many companies are coming out to support in a time like this. But what I found, you don't often think about it, but the reality is so much technology actually goes into finding things like cures, and 40 million of this fund is actually going to go specifically towards the response and readiness and online learning initiatives. If you think about it, artificial intelligence is a key area where they can start to use the, technology to sort of help think through what different solutions might be in terms of vaccines and whatnot. And this is where a lot of that money is being directed to.
Yeah, well, that is the interesting thing. We keep talking about, the vaccine. All the governments are talking about the vaccine, but obviously that has to be researched. And, they typically use high-end computers and AI to sequence, the coronavirus genome and try to find a way to make that vaccine and cure. So again, this money will go a long way into helping that. They're also putting $10 million into what they call an innovation fund and local-based community efforts as well. So some interesting stuff happening there too. From what I understand, one of their partners, the Houston Methodist Hospital, they've got a platform called SickBay where they're able to actually take regular hospital beds and turn them into virtual ICU beds in minutes so that they can monitor coronavirus patients. So I think that's pretty cool. And, we talked about Dyson, has been asked by the UK government to make, I think, 10,000 ventilators. So Intel is actually working with them and a medical consultancy firm called TTP to help design and make these ventilators. So the money, I think, will be well spent, definitely. Also in the news this week, we've talked about this a while back, and it's finally and quietly rolling out in Canada, the UK, and Australia. Google Duplex AI calling is happening. John, explain how that all works.
So the idea behind this is that you can use your Google Home smart speaker or your Nest speaker, whatever its branding has. You can actually say, hey, Google, call and order me an appointment for something, whether, obviously not right now, but like a restaurant reservation, order a pizza, order a haircut reservation, whatever those kinds of things that you would normally do, you can basically automate and have Google call for you. And it's kind of interesting to see because I didn't really hear a lot about the trials in the US. Because there was a concern that, this is calling the wrong places, it's asking for the wrong things, or it's asking for stuff that was never even intended by the person, that made the request. So, but I guess they've worked out some of the kinks if they're already expanding it to Canada and other places.
I don't know who they'd be calling. The examples I saw in the past was the Google Duplex calling to make a restaurant reservation or a haircut appointment. Most of that is kind of dead right now. So, maybe I can get it to call AJ.
Yeah, but one of
the
problems that I found, because I use it sometimes to call like people in my household, but it doesn't actually with the smartphones or the phones that we're using or the networks that we're on, it doesn't actually send a call or ID either, you know? And so the thing about call ID is it really is critical, or sorry, it can be extremely helpful. For example, ordering from a restaurant for pickup, you know? If they get your number ahead of time, they're easily able to pull up your account and sort of check what items that you might want to reorder and sort of streamline some things. And I would think the same would be for, visiting a clinic or a doctor or anything like that. Obviously, you can give them your phone number as soon as you're connected, but it'd be great if it could also show who is actually calling.
So one of the hard things to get while you're out shopping, and I don't know if you guys have found this, is toilet paper. I still, for the love of God, don't know why I can't find any. I don't know like how much toilet paper everyone has. But you know what the next biggest thing tech wise is hard to find?
Is it?
Webcam.
Oh,
Yep.
I didn't even let you.
well, I was going to say, when you said next thing tech-wise, I thought you meant toilet paper was tech. And I was like, unless you're using something special. But yeah, webcams, yeah. Well,
There was that toilet paper robot at CES we saw this year, but
actually, I was going to guess yeast for baking, but I guess that's not
Yeah, that's
tech-wise
hard to
either.
find. I couldn't find.
Yeah.
I couldn't find that either. But no, webcams are a hot commodity online right now. They are going anywhere from 2, 3 to 500% more than they regularly go for if you can find them, which is kind of a
well,
ripoff.
all the profiteers can't sell medical equipment, so they can sell webcams.
Yeah, they can get away doing that, right? So the big ones out there would be the Logitech ones, and they are marked up like crazy right now. Everyone obviously is doing Zoom or some type of video conferencing, so they're trying to, I guess, up their game. Because a lot of these cameras on older laptops and older desktops are not as good anymore. So they're trying to find a nice HD webcam. Well, you're going to be paying for it.
It's really interesting to see how many people have been thrust into the role of IT support person for themselves during this pandemic, because they don't have the luxury of having someone from the office to help them in person, or at least they shouldn't be. And so they're being forced to figure all this stuff out. And it's something that I see all the time, like on my Facebook feed, someone's like, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? And it's interesting to see how everyone's trying to help. But if you can't even get the tech in the first place, it's really difficult.
Yeah. It's funny, John, that you bring that up, because I was actually speaking with a recruiting firm, a friend of mine who's a partner in one of the bigger recruiting firms in town, and they, I was asking them sort of how hard have you guys been hit, because I imagine not a lot of people are looking to hire right now. He said that one of the areas that was surprisingly still quite active in terms of growth and hiring right now is IT support companies. And if you think about IT support, it's actually been moving to the point where a lot of the support is actually done online now. Like when you're dealing with your IT support company, first thing they try to do is just remotely log into your computer and solve some of those issues. But you're right, like so many of us are now trying to get our home offices up and running and working to the point where we've got solid internet connections, possibly these webcams installed and all that kind of thing. So I was getting information as that being one industry or one type of business that is actually doing quite well right now.
I guess we could all be doing this in our off hours to make a little extra money.
New gig economy, right?
Yeah.
Online
Uber tech.
Oh yeah, there must be something out there. We'll have to look into that.
Tech rabbit.
Tech rabbit.
Yeah.
I love it. Amazon is apparently delaying their Prime Day. So they've started kind of this Christmas shopping in July kind of thing called Prime Day. Typically now happens over 2 days, July 15th and 16th, but they are delaying it. And they say they expect to lose about $100 million because of it.
It's the only thing we can do right now is online shop. I don't know why they're delaying.
I know. I think the problem though is delivering and getting the stuff. I don't know if you've tried to order anything on Amazon right now that is not like an essential item. it's like a month away.
But
Yes.
the thing I've noticed though, and I have some really good anecdotal evidence because I have a window right here into my complex, and I can see how many Amazon trucks come in on an hourly basis. Clearly, they're delivering stuff, and I've heard from a lot of my friends, and myself included. I've ordered stuff that wasn't supposed to be delivered for a month, and I got it the next day. Like, I think they're just setting expectations on a lot of these things. It's like, well, we'll try, and but generally it shows up pretty quickly as long as it's available in the local warehouse. And I live really close to an Amazon warehouse, so I usually get stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think the challenge is just getting the stuff from their suppliers. I think would be the big thing. I've talked to a lot of friends that are in the tech industry, and they're doing their best to try to get stuff shipped out of their warehouses, but they're having trouble. Getting, depending where their location is, being allowed to actually have workers in the warehouse to ship stuff out, especially down in California where a lot of them are based. So I found it kind of interesting. Okay, we're going to have to take a break. So much more to talk about today. We'll be back after this break. We'll be chatting about photo sticks. Last week, we chatted about how to back up and organize your photos depending on what platform you're using. Well, one very popular item online right now would be photo sticks. These are little flash drives that you pay a lot of money for and essentially plug them into the side of your computer in the USB slot, and they automatically take all of the photos and videos off of your computer, or sorry, not take them, but back them up onto that stick. So the appeal is obviously it's a no-brainer. It just does it all automatically for you. Is this the best route to go? Obviously you're paying a premium for this over a regular flash drive. Are there alternatives? John, what are your thoughts?
Well, I did a lot of research on this because this is something we get asked about pretty regularly, and we had a number of people write in after our last segment about, what about photo sticks? Because I think they're getting bombarded by ads for it on Facebook and other places, and it does sound like on the surface like a good idea, but I couldn't find any what I would call legitimate reviews for it. I found a lot of what I call fake reviews promoting the product clearly with a message like, buy it from here kind of thing. And when I did find some actual reviews, they were all pretty negative. And one of the problems that it seems with the photo stick is that it's not compatible with all of the older machines. And so you buy this thing, and it can be pretty expensive depending on the size that you get and where you live, because you have to pay for shipping as well. Is that it won't work on an older Windows machine or an older Mac. So I was trying to find an alternative that would do kind of the same thing or very similar that would work on these older machines. And one of the challenges I had is I could not find anything that was a legitimate product. I was hoping to find an open source product that someone created a script that you could just run that would copy all your stuff to a thing, an external backup, and that kind of thing does exist. It's just not super easy and approachable for the non-technical people. But what I did find was something that quite surprised me, actually. It's a program called, and I'm going to spell this out because it's a kind of a weird name, XNViewMP. So it's an image management tool, and it's available for literally every platform. You can get it for Windows, old 32-bit, 64-bit, Mac OS, even Linux versions of it. And what it is it's essentially a browser for your hard drive. And it allows you to see at a quick glance your entire computer system at the folder level. And it'll actually show you which folders have images in it. And you can click on that folder, go inside and look at those folders or photos and preview them in a little preview window. You can manage it from there. You can copy it. You can move it. You can organize it. You can categorize things. You can do a lot of things that people have been asking us. Like, I want to organize my photos. I have a lot of photos. I want to organize them. How do I do that? And the great thing about this particular tool, and you can get it at xnview.com. It's completely free. So my recommendation would be to take the money that you were going to spend on a photo stick and buy an external hard drive that you can use for your backups, and then use this tool to find all your stuff, categorize, organize it, add some metadata to it so that you know what these photos are. And people like creating albums and all that kind of stuff, and then put that backup from your computer hard drive onto this external hard drive. And it'll probably be cheaper than buying a photo stick. And you'll learn a lot in the process too. It's not completely, a set and forget. You do need to do a little bit of looking around and seeing where your photos are, but chances are your photos are probably limited to a handful of photo folders. And this program will let you find those really quickly. And the fact that it's completely free, it runs on pretty much every computer that you can find, and it supports just about every image type that you would have. And the nice bonus is too, it actually has a photo editor built into it. So you can actually manipulate your photos. You can do some effects and cropping and all that kind of stuff all within this app. And it's completely free. So I think that's a pretty good alternative to PhotoStick. And it's something you can download right now. You don't have to order it and wait for it to come. You don't have to overpay on shipping. Spend that money, go to Amazon, just buy a hard drive and back up your stuff.
Say the name one more time, John.
xnview.com, and the app itself is called XNView MP.
That's a fantastic suggestion. Another one too is that a lot of these external hard drives that are available nowadays, from the big names like Western Digital or Seagate, they typically have backup software included with them as well. So I find them pretty simple to set up, and in that backup software, you can have automatic backups happening as well. You can basically say, "Hey, I want to back up these folders," and like you said, John, your pictures are typically in a select set of folders. Like your pictures folder, for example, is the main one. If you've got a videos folder as well, and you can basically point the software to those folders, and then set up to have it back up like 3 a.m. every night, or once a week or whatever you feel comfortable with. And like you were saying, I think you get a lot more bang for your buck. You'd be able to spend that money on a decent hard drive with some decent size to get all those pictures. We are going to have to take a break now. When we come back, we'll learn how one Canadian company is switching over their manufacturing to now print and make medical supplies and the journey behind that. It's super fascinating. You're back with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here with John Biehler. Want to bring on a guest we've had on in the past. His name is Eugene Suyu. He is the CEO and co-founder behind Tinkerine Studios. They're a company that makes really cool 3D printers for the education market. Well, he's just got a Health Canada go-ahead to manufacture medical supplies, which I think during this time when there are shortages is a good thing. Thanks for joining us, Eugene.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So tell us what this is all about. You've got a certification from Health Canada. What can you actually make?
Well, we got the Class 1 medical establishment license, and that limits us to anything that's considered a Class 1 device. They've outlined what they are. I don't have that off the top of my head. I do believe it's face shields, face masks, and it's limited to a couple things. But things like gloves and gowns are still considered Class 2.
And do you have to retool your manufacturing process, obviously, to start making these? How does that all work?
Yeah, well, it doesn't feel like it's too far from what we do. We still use 3D printing. We still use some of the laser cutter equipment that we have in-house to cut out the visor shield portion. But we do have to retool for packaging, and we do have to retool for what it is that we're actually building. So instead of building complex robotic machines, we're now making what we consider to be relatively simple shields.
Well, it sounds simple, but I just look at during this crisis, governments are leaning on different companies to switch up what they typically make. Down in the U.S., they're getting GM and Ford to make ventilators,
Mhm.
and I'm just wondering, like, how does a car company go to making ventilators? I mean, there's a whole shift, in I guess expertise and just from the manufacturing process, to get an assembly line that makes cars to make ventilators. That's the whole thing. Like, how long do you think it's going to take you just to make, basic face shields, like to retool your facility to do that?
Well, we're doing it already now, and you do
That
it
was
in
fast.
increments. Yeah, you do it as fast as you can, and you do it in increments. So, when we first looked at doing this 3 weeks ago, it was a simple company initiative to make a couple, and When we say a couple, we're talking about 50 to 100 at a time. But we really quickly realized that we needed to at least hit 100 a day if we wanted to make any impact. And so we did that within probably a couple of days. We moved a couple workbenches around. We moved all the 3D printers we had downstairs into the warehouse production area. And then we tried to look for as much material as we could from the plastic suppliers. But then you quickly realize that 100 a day is not a lot. And so we retooled again, and we went to 240 and then a day. And then we looked at the equation from just the company's perspective. We used to 3D print these brackets that took an hour, and we realized really quickly that these brackets take too much time. And if we wanted to do anything of scale, we need to either remove the brackets altogether or make them really, really small so that we can do them in 5-10 minutes. And so we redid the design again. The design team and I kind of jumped in all arms on deck. And we are now at a capacity of about 1,000 a day if we really wanted to push all the machines to run 24/7. In one shift alone, we can get about 900 or so sets of these clips. So it's just a constant retooling. It's not an overnight thing. It probably won't be for anyone that's doing this. And it's a lot about the supply chain because, going from making car parts to making delicate electronics that can, monitor airflow and all that stuff, they have some of the technologies already, but it's deploying it in a totally different way. And yeah, a lot of it will come from supply chain, just making sure they have new components to do this as well.
Eugene, one of the things we talked about previously about sort of makers getting involved in the 3D printing of medical equipment is the sterility of these parts once they've been made. A lot of hobbyist 3D printers, they're in garages, that kind of thing. Can you talk about what you've had to do to sort of get certified and address that aspect of things, but also some of the challenges that we're seeing in the communities with 3D printed medical equipment?
Yeah, so sterilization is pretty big. I think the sense that I get is there are companies out there, and there's obviously groups of makers, ourselves included as one of those companies. We're all wanting to help in some way, shape, or form, and the intention is all the same. We want to get these protective gear to frontline healthcare workers. The concern is always around, you're making an impact or trying to make an impact, but then you end up being, asymptomatic, and then you end up transmitting the actual virus over to, the healthcare workers that are going to get these PPEs. And so for us, we look at it from a pure liability perspective. So, can the company afford to do this, number one? And if we can, what procedural stuff can we put in place? And so that is full sanitization of the actual manufacturing floor every 3 to 5 days, depending on the activity that's happening and if we're getting deliveries. That is a full sanitization of or isolation of the finished part. So how long does it sit on the shelf for? Because we know this virus has a shelf life on plastics. How we handle these plastics as they get printed, as they come off, gloves, masks, do we wear shields ourselves? All these procedural stuff are super important, at least for a company. And, I would also venture to say for any maker, hacker groups out there, they ought to be looking at the same things. Just the intentions of helping alone isn't enough. If you start to become the organization that helps vector the virus into the healthcare workers, that's the worst thing that we could do for a moment like this.
You talked about the supply chain. So you're going to make some face masks for healthcare workers. How difficult is it to get all the supplies for that? Obviously, it's mostly plastic, I would assume, but how quickly can you get that material?
It's becoming more difficult. If you asked me that 3 weeks ago when we put the announcement out that we were doing this, we single-handedly swooped up every single piece of 4x8 PETG in Vancouver. I just called around, and there wasn't a lot of sheets to begin with, and so we became overnight the biggest source of PETG in the Greater Vancouver region. It's getting harder because majority of these supplies are being manufactured in the U.S. and there is a huge demand for this material down in the U.S. just for their own population alone. We've seen that the wait times are now starting to get longer. So if you weren't in the queue for materials, it's now going to take 4 to 8 weeks to just for the visor shield material. But the key with supply chain is to make things simple, right? Looking for a standardized part and not introduce other complexities in place. So we 3D print 3 components, and we have 3 additional components, one of which is foam for covering kind of the forehead portion so that it's sealed. And then one is the visor, and one is the elastic that goes behind the head. And that's it. We worry about 3 outside components, and then we take care of 3 of our own. We may end up going with a process of injection molding or extrusion for the clips on the side of the shield, just for scale if we need to. But there seems to be an okay supply of everything but the visor material, and I think that's just because everyone is also doing it. The supply is just getting pulled right out of the chain from all these maker groups, companies, us, and even larger companies like Bauer.
So my next question, a few weeks ago, you've decided to get into this to help during this health crisis, and you're figuring out how to make these face masks on scale. You know what I mean? Like instead of like 5 a day, you want to do hundreds or even thousands of them.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get that issue solved, and hopefully you've got enough material for a while, how do you get it to the front line then? Do the hospitals approach you? Do you approach the hospitals? Does Health Canada broker that? How does that all work?
A little bit of everything. We have tried really, really hard, and the team here has done, I think, a really great job of reaching out to hospitals and even just family physicians. We've classified for ourselves what it means to to serve the frontline essential workers. So we broke it down into 2 categories. The first category being anyone in healthcare. So that means it's the doctors, the nurses, everyone inside hospitals. But it also extends outside into the people that are in the pharmacists, because I know that a lot of the times they're not getting the proper equipment and the attention. It's also the firefighters and the paramedics, because they're being sent into the homes, and also people aren't really thinking about that. So we've classified those areas as what we would consider level 1, and then level 2s are all the other essential workers. So the grocery stores, do they need protection as well? They are dealing with people, and so they ought to be connected, right? And protected, and so the way that the reason why we built these 2 levels is because if it gets worse and we only have, let's say, 5,000 face shields to be able to provide people, we want to be able to make the proper call. Do we allocate all 5,000 to these level 1 workers, or do we split it 50-50? Our choice would most definitely go towards supplying this all for level 1 healthcare workers in this scenario.
And I want to talk about the money aspect now, because a lot of small businesses and even large corporations are switching their manufacturing and production lines. What does this do to your bottom line? Like, this isn't obviously a big money maker, right?
No, it does have an element of profit built into the business model. We are a for-profit business at the end of the day, and the way that we are looking at this is fairly simple. At least we think it's fairly simple. A device like PPE or any product really needs to have some form of revenue built in, so that we are able to continue to grow this in scale. If we were just donating this, we could donate maybe a couple thousand, a couple tens of thousands, and then call it a day, because the funds are gone, or the allocation of funds just won't be there. If we want to continue to provide additional shields for people for duration of time to come, then building profit margin into this that allows us to continue to do this, I think it's one of the only ways to do it, to be able to continue to do this at scale. Now, unless there is funding that comes through from the government side of things, right? Federal government or provincial government says, you know what, we need 10,000, 15,000 plus or more of these shields to go to every hospital, every nurse, every doctor, and we will fund it. Until that happens, as a company, we have to do this. So securing securing funding is important. We're looking into that as a company. As it is right now, the company is actually putting all of its capital resources behind a project like this. And yeah, there is a profit margin built in, but it's not significant. We're not, one of the things that we want to do is to make sure that we're not going out there and, taking advantage of the times, the fact that these are in, super high demand and making a 2,000% a profit margin in our product. No, it's still built in properly, like a normal business would have a product, and we're not looking to take advantage of the situation.
And I guess my last question here, and we just got a minute left. How is the coordination? I mean, I imagine there's a lot of small companies, businesses like yours that are in the manufacturing business. How do you find the coordination from a health level so that you can get these face shields out to hospital workers or firefighters? Like, it seems like you've had to kind of try a few different ways. Could there be better coordination in the future, do you think?
Yeah. I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is the fact that there isn't a lot of coordination. So everyone is kind of running around trying to figure things out. It could be the cities, it could be the hospitals themselves. But ideally, under normal circumstances, most of these PPEs are handled at a centralized, government level. This is not typically done at the individual hospital level. So, I do know that the government here in BC is trying to put something together that allows proper procurement, and it just hasn't fully come into fruition yet. And so, we are working with the individual hospitals, the individual physicians, and the clinics, because everyone wants to be a little bit ahead of the curve in case it gets bad, right? And it does add a significant amount more manpower to do individual outreach to doctors, physicians, regional hospitals. But it's got to be done. And, we're taking it and we're doing it, and it absolutely makes sense to. So we'll continue to do that until something more centralized comes around.
We've been talking with Eugene Suyu. He is the co-founder and CEO behind Tinkerine Studios here in British Columbia. They've just got Health Canada license to make things like face shields and some basic medical supplies, and just finding out how he's going through the different challenges of doing that. Thanks again for joining us, Eugene.
Yeah, that was fun.
We come back from the break, more tech to talk here on Get Connected. Back after this. Don't forget to visit our website, getconnectedmedia.com. We are always giving away tech prizes. This week, we're giving away a Cobra dash cam, a dual dash cam. You'll be able to actually record what's happening in front of you and behind you.
You mean the empty streets?
Yeah. Yes, save that for your grandchildren. And again, to enter, getconnectedmedia.com, all you have to do is subscribe to our newsletter. The newsletter tab's right up top there. There's some links. It's pretty easy to find. Once you're subscribed, you're entered to win this and all the contests this year. We're giving away thousands of dollars in prizes, so it's super, super cool. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're always posting all our video podcasts and great how-to videos and product overviews. So lots of great content. And again, just do a search on on YouTube for Get Connected Media, and you will find us there. Subscribe and like our stuff. It would be very, very helpful. That's all the time we have left. I want to thank all the folks that helped put the show together, including John, Stephen, AJ, of course, and the rest of the gang. We'll see you again next time.